Farmer Johnny here, Taylor Family Farm. Just going to give you a little look-see today where we're at. We're at Stony Creek Farm in Franklin, Tennessee. We're having a small farm conference. There's probably around 25, 30 people here today. And we're going to be speaking here in just a little bit after lunch. Just talking about kind of telling our story a little bit, where we come from, what we're doing, and where we're going, hopefully. And just kind of give these people a little look, see what we do. Well, we're going to go ahead and start. I'm Johnny Taylor, affectionately known as Farmer Johnny by some folks. And this is my wife, Terri. Been my wife for 31 beautiful years.
Amen.
And
good answer.
She's put up with me a long time, and so far she's still putting up with me. So we're doing good today. So we're just going to tell you a little bit about our story, kind of how we got started with what we do. My dad was a pastor, but he grew up a farmer's kid. So he was kind of an on-again, off-again farmer over the years as I was growing up. And we raised a few crops, and we always raised animals. And I fell in love more with the animal side of things than I do the gardening and that type stuff. That's too much work. I'll let somebody else do it, and you can buy my meat, and I'll buy your vegetables. That's kind of our way of doing it. We've gardened over the year, but we don't do much gardening now at all. We live in Etheridge, Amish community, so we have a couple of Amish people that we do business with, that we trust the way they grow things. Just so you know, if you buy Amish produce, does not mean it's anything special, because the Amish use chemicals and things just like everybody else, and some of them maybe even more. So ask questions. Make sure you know what you're buying when you buy from people. So we started, I grew up with chickens. I always joke that, every parsonage we ever left had a chicken coop when we moved. So I always had chickens. And chickens and pigs have always been kind of my first love. That's what I enjoy doing most. But we also milk some cows and do a little bit of beef. So you kind of, as we were discussing a while ago, in a small farm setting, a lot of times you have to do a lot of different things to pay the bills if you want to be a full-time farmer. So we also make all of our own feed that we use for our chickens and our hogs, and we sell a little bit of feed, and everything we do is pasture-raised and non-GMO. So that's kind of how we got started, because that's been part of my love just as a kid growing up. Then her story is a little different on the journey part of it. Go ahead.
Well, I grew up in the country too. We had laying hens when I was a kid. Grew up raising a garden every year. My dad he loved his garden, so that's what when he was off on the weekends, that's what we did. Pick peas, do all those things. My mother was an avid canner. She put up enough food every year to last us through the winter. All those wonderful things. My mom made everything from scratch. And as a small child, I had food allergies, so my mom was kind of a pioneer, not heard of in our community, of anybody researching about what you eat and how it affects your body. So there was no internet, so she's at the library, she's talking to people, she's doing all these things, and I wound up being able to go to one of the top allergists. The man that discovered Candida yeast, Dr. Crook, was my childhood allergist. So anyway, we learned about rotational diets and how you remove things that you're allergic to, but the gut building part of health was not a thing when I was a kid. Mom didn't know that, so all she could do was cut things out and all these things. So I had that nutritional background. Didn't eat sugar when I was a kid, other than what I might have had a little bit at school. It always affected me terribly. So I had all that, and then when I started having children, you start thinking about things even more, and then there's more information coming out. And then we did have a daughter who at 4 years old my mom had her tested. She was severely gluten intolerant. That wasn't a thing either 25 years ago. So I was thankful for the background that I had and the knowledge that I already had to be able to help her, because she had, terrible moodiness, all the personality things that go along with the allergy struggles. And then that just continued, and then when we bought our farm, you know, you get to looking at, well, what are we feeding our animals that our kids are going to eat? You know, all those things. What do they feed the meat that comes from the store? Things that a lot of people just don't even think about, you know. It's cooking from scratch is something a lot of people don't think about, of what additives are in the food. But I grew up being fed from scratch, so I knew that part. Cut out as many additives as you can. And then when we start feeding our own animals, at some point GMOs started coming out, and somebody gave us a book, you know, Seeds of Deception, great book, great read. And then we start asking our farmers, hey, what's in this feed, you know? And then you find out that they don't really know. You know, they don't even think about it. They sign their documents for their corn seed at the beginning of every year, and whatever they're given is what they use. And so then he starts researching about where can we get non-GMO grains, you know, to go against the grain a little bit, you know, to feed our animals for our family. Because it all started there. What we do now started there, to feed our family.
Yeah, we weren't doing it to sell. It was just, we have a big family, and we just wanted to, and I'm a meat eater.
Yeah.
You know, when we sit down to eat, there's meat on the table. If it's not, supper's not ready, or breakfast is not, whatever, you know, it's not complete until there's some meat. That's for me. And of course, all of our kids are very much meat eaters now because they've grown up eating, you know, we may not always had plenty to eat, but we've always had meat. And you know, if you buy meat at the grocery store, it's one of the highest products that you're buying when you buy groceries. And so we haven't bought commercial meat in any kind of quantities in a long, long time, because we raised it for us and for us first before we ever started selling anything. The idea was feed us, and then as we grew, we you know, it's like, okay, people start asking you, would you sell me this, or would you? And that's kind of the birth of that. What really got us started on our farming journey, though, was about 18 years ago. We bought our farm, and we had been doing a lot of different things in life. I was cutting timber those days, and so as soon as we bought our farm, I went and bought me a pig. And I bought a sow, and just a few weeks later, she had 13 pigs, and we've been on the roll ever since. Not long after we bought our farm, some friends of ours, they gave us this Polyface farm video from Joel Salatin.
Who started Polyface?
Yeah. So,
Many of you.
okay, well, Joel Salatin, he's kind of the pioneer in a lot of this type of farming that we do. We saw this video. It was a VHS. I mean, he's showing how he's got chicken tractors and, you know, rotating hogs on pasture and through the woods and cows and stuff, and raising these meat chickens and processing. So we watched that video and we kind of looked at each other like, we can do that. So we started doing that. Our first 50 meat chickens, I had a little makeshift chicken tractor. It was something I had made for something else, and we drug it around the yard and raised 50 chickens. And sold a couple of those, gave a few away. Got our, so to speak, we cut our teeth on processing chickens.
Note to self, if you don't like cutting the grass, don't raise your chickens in your yard.
No, because they do fertilize.
They'll have more grass.
Yeah, and of course that's part of the reasoning that we move things, is they are spreading their own fertilizer.
What's the tractor?
A chicken tractor.
What is it?
It would be probably considered anything that's a shelter that's movable. And the original ones that Joel Salatin, they still use them on their farm in Virginia. They're 10 by 12, and they're 2 foot tall, and they're just a flat roof, and they got chicken wire around the sides of them. And they have a little dolly, he just pulls them, and they move them every day.
Oh.
So the chickens are getting fresh grass, fresh, you know, salad bar every day as you drag it through the field or through your yard or wherever you're doing it.
With them in it?
With them in it. But
Keeps predators out, predators can't.
They learn really quick after a couple of days when you put them out. We put them out at about 3 weeks of age, and then they are out in the field for about 5 weeks. And we move them every day on new grass. But after you move them a few times, they get into the routine, and they want that next set of grass. They want the crickets and the grasshoppers and the bugs that are down in that grass. So they start moving really easy. It doesn't take much to train them.
What about free ranging?
Well, you can, but there's some drawbacks to that. And if I was in just a like a little homeowner situation where I had a few chickens, yeah, I've got a few chickens in the yard too.
Right.
But as far as any kind of scale, the predators are pretty rough on chickens,
Especially the
and
meat birds.
especially the meat birds, because they're pretty helpless and they're not. They're just dumb. Okay, let's put it that way. They don't have much sense. They don't have much fight or flight about them. They've been bred just for meat. We're like an old laying hen. She can get away from a few things. Now, if you've got an aggressive dog or a hawk or something, then you lose some chickens to those things. But the idea with the free ranging versus the pasture model is if you turn your chickens out here in your yard, they're just going to go around and they just here everywhere. Well, with the model we're using, it's confined in a certain space, so we do a couple of things is they get fresh every day. They're not on ground that they were on yesterday or the day before. And the birds really love the clover, the grasses, and it's just, you get all those extra nutrients in your meat because it makes them do that. And the biggest thing, one of the biggest things is all of their manure is in that one spot for the day. So when you move that pen the next day, you got a kind of a mat of chicken manure, depending on how many chickens you have in your pen. You have this mat, and then when it rains, it starts raining, you can go out in our fields and you can see these green strips through the field. And I've got a farm that some friends of ours own, and we raise almost all of our chickens on that farm because it's a lot bigger than what we have of our personal land. And we've got several fields that we raise chickens in, have been raising for quite a few years. And when we rotate his cows through those fields, the cows it's lush, thick, green grass, and they just can usually can graze those fields several more times in a season versus the fields where we haven't been running chickens in.
And weeds are diminished.
Yes, you do have some issues with weeds because there's certain weeds that do like that high fertility come through chicken litter, and so you'll have some things that are going to pop up, but usually with time most of that stuff will kind of play out, especially if you're doing a good rotation. I have several dogs, and dogs, if raised with your animals, around your animals, that's not going to kill your chickens. You don't want, you wouldn't just take the neighbor's dog and turn them out over there, because if your chicken gets out, they're going to kill you.
So these dogs you leave with the
Yes, I have some dogs. I have 2 dogs on that farm that we rotate around the farm with different sets of pens, and then with my laying flock, I have another dog, and they're in an electronet, and just a big electric netting fence, and that dog lives with those chickens year round. He's always with them. And, if you go over there and he don't know you, he barks and carries on, and which that's what we want. Most of the time, all it takes is for a dog to be successful with most predators is their smell and their bark. And what dogs do well, they mark their territory. There's a reason for that. And wherever they go and do their business, every predator around there that's on the ground knows where that dog is being. And that's great.
What
And then,
breed do you have? What breed of dog?
well, I have found over the years it really doesn't make any difference if you raise them with animals. But predominantly, I've got several Great Pyrenees or some type of Pyrenees cross, and but I raise labs also, and my lab dogs don't kill my chickens. Now, they didn't start out that way. It took training. Yeah, I have 4 dogs at the house, and when you pull up there, they meet you. And people say, well, how do you keep those dogs from killing your chickens? I said, we live here. And those dogs know what's expected and what they can and can't do. Just like raising kids or, or training, an employee. If they're trained well, then they do their job, and they don't tear up more than they're good for. So dogs are great predator proofing for everything. So when we first saw that first video with Polyface, we saw what they were doing, and we thought, well, we can do this. We didn't start out trying to do it for everybody. We started out for us, and as the years have progressed, we started selling a little more stuff. And as I was telling some of these other folks, for years we bootlegged everything. We didn't, we killed our own hogs and made our own sausage, and there was no labeling on it or anything like that. It was just, you pull up my driveway and you'd say, I heard you had sausage, and I would say, who told you that? Because we were really, was always expecting some official pull in, the revenuers. That's right, the revenuers. And so, about 7 years ago now, we kind of took the leap of, okay, we're not going to be in the bootlegging business. It's hard to grow a business like that when you can't tell anybody. When it's all just plain old word of mouth. So it was like, okay, we're either going to grow this business to the point where that, and we were already making a living doing it, but it was always who's that pulling up out there type thing. So we made the decision. My lovely wife decided we needed a little farm store. I was not for it. She was. She was right. I was wrong. It's been. We already had a certain amount of people come into the farm for different things. Feed. We sell feed. That's another thing. It's on our part of our journey. When we started wanting to do this, I couldn't find the feed that I wanted to feed my animals. And we had learned more about the GMOs, and we decided that we just wanted to stay away from that as much as we could. So that was a whole nother learning process in our journey of trying to figure out where we're going to buy feed. And at that time, you could buy feed most any place in Texas or Virginia, Ohio, but you couldn't find anything local. So I started asking local farmers that we had been buying some corn and things from about, non-GMO corn. And, you're talking about getting looked at like a two-headed freak. Because these guys, they've been indoctrinated into that, and great people. They're, farmers are most of the time, they're just salt of the earth, good folks. But, I couldn't find anything. So we spent several years rolling around I would go over here and get ingredients. I would drive 100 miles and pick up this. And so we started sourcing stuff to make our own feed. Well, when we started selling a chicken and we said it's non-GMO, people started saying, where do you get your feed? We make it. Will you sell me some? No. Why? I said, because I don't have enough ingredients for myself, much less to sell you a product. Well, that's grown over the years, and we now are able to sell a pretty decent amount of feed through the summer, or year-round really, but the summer months when people are raising their chickens and their pigs and stuff, that's when it's pretty high demand. But every year is a little bit different, because I've made some deals with some local farmers now that are growing corn for me. But one year one guy's in, next year he's out. So I got to find somebody else. And so it's always, it's something to figure out every day. But we have come a long way to the point where that I'm not driving 100 miles to pick up a load of corn. I'm not driving 150 miles to buy good and high quality minerals that we want to use in our feed. We can ship that stuff in, and as much of it as I can. I'm a firm believer in staying as local as possible. If you're my neighbor and I spend money with you and you spend money with me, that means it stays in our neighborhood a lot longer. And so I try to do that as much as possible.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know if Lee said anything, but we have 9 children, so when you're shopping for animal feed for your family, we eat a lot of meat 3 times a day. We could not afford to have it shipped in, so we were forced into the good thing of him learning to make feed, which has benefited us all these years. But sometimes hard life sometimes pushes you to, necessity is the mother of invention, so you learn to do better and do better things. Somewhere along our journey, I don't know who's heard of the Weston Price Foundation. Anybody? It's another great resource for nutrition. That's the folks, that's the dentist who traveled the world researching tribals, peoples, and why he could go into a tribe, clean their teeth. Now we're talking about other countries, high in the mountains, back people that are not out in among everyday life.
They're not eating a lot of processed food.
He would clean their teeth, and they might have moss and green stuff all over their teeth, but they had 0 cavities under there. So he wanted to know why. So he started researching what they ate. And it goes back to, if they butchered an animal, the liver, the spleen, all those organ meats are the things they ate first, because those were the prize. They didn't have deaths at birth. They didn't have unhealthy mamas when they were carrying their children. So I beseech you to go find westonprice.org online and read about their nutritional practices. But that's why we've pushed to keep this type of farming for our family and for other people. When people who know the nourishing foods to eat, they're looking for what we do. That's why. Because when those animals are rotated and they're getting those fresh nutrients that haven't been chemicalized, they haven't been overgrazed, they're getting all that good stuff that our bodies need, that nourish us and help us to be healthy. So that's a lot of the reason that we do what we do and continue to do, is because we want that. And I couldn't afford to go to Whole Foods and buy it for this many children and for us. So we just decided to do it for ourselves. Just so happened he loved to raise it. So we love to eat it, he loves to raise it, and other people love to eat it too. So that was a huge part of building my children's guts and bone broth. They're a big proponent of bone broth, where you boil your bones. I tell everybody that buys one of our chickens, because they're not cheap, I say, you don't waste anything. When everybody's done, those bones go in the crock pot with some water, and you simmer it for 24 hours with a little apple cider vinegar. Get all the minerals you can. The minerals are in the bones. So you drink that broth, cook your rice in it, cook your beans in it, anything, instead of using water, use that bone broth. So good for your body.
It's so good.
For your constitution.
It may be good for your body, but it's so good to eat.
Good for your taste buds too. So yeah, all those little
If you're not
secrets.
cooking rice in chicken stock, you're missing out.
The chicken feet, they make great chicken stock, and it's good for your joints and your all that stuff. And I could go on for a long time on nutrition. So anyway, we didn't know till we started talking about all this stuff, the team that God made us to be, with his farming side and my nutrition side, and the lives that we get to impact. So we're very honored to be in the journey we're in right now.
Amen.
And our goal is nutrient-dense food.
Yes.
We try to put as good a quality. Our early struggle with finding feed was non-GMO, conventional feed, organic feed. There's a lot of variations, and we found that we settled with just the non-GMO because if you went to strictly the organic side, our customer base just went from this to this because the prices is substantially higher anyway. And at least in the middle, we got to kind of figure out we're in the middle ground with the non-GMO, the pasture-based system. That way we can still get a good high quality, good nutrient dense food, but kind of keep it in the middle of the price range. And if you've never bought a chicken, we get $4.50 a pound for whole chickens. I know that's a little bit steep if you go to the grocery store, but you do get what you pay for. And most people that have eaten our chicken, they say that there's hands down better product. Some people don't care, and that's fine. Go to Walmart or Kroger and buy your chicken. We raise about 10,000 chickens a year, so I could not supply Walmart. Or if everybody in here bought chicken, if you're chicken eaters, and if everybody here today bought chicken from me, I would run out of chicken. We're a small farm. Like I said, we do about 10,000 chickens a year. We've got 400 or 500 laying hens at all time. We process 5 hogs a month, year round. So that tells you, the kind of scale that we're on. So I want to show y'all what our shirts say. A friend of ours came up with this logo. Can y'all read it? Give your food a better life and it'll return the flavor. Taylor Family Farm. Really good. We have a kind of a unique situation. In the state, most states have some sort of exemption where you can process on farm. We process all of our own chickens on the farm. On that farm. My buddy got out of the Navy a bunch of years ago. He saw the same video I saw. He's ready to go.
Read the books.
He read the books. He drank the Kool-Aid, and he
Wanted to do this.
he wanted to do it. Well, he went through all the hoops and built the on-farm facility and got the exemption.
The first on-farm state-inspected facility in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah. So after a couple of years, he really realized he didn't want to do chickens. He likes his sheep and his cows a lot more.
And his weekends off.
And his weekends off. Yeah. We were already doing chickens, bootlegging. So we were only selling to people, you know, just like you, friends and families. Well, with the facility, we could actually put a label on it, and we sell some restaurants now. We sell to a couple of meat markets that buy our chickens, and they break them down and sell the products through their business. We couldn't do that when we were killing them in the backyard. So that's part of the reason we are on that farm, is because I told him, I said, we don't need to give this exemption up because it's a whole lot harder to get it a second time than to just keep it. And so we can legally, the state of Tennessee says we can do 20,000 birds a year in this facility. 10,000 is about what we've done the last couple of years. And unless we have some really fireball young married couple that wants to come and work, that's probably about all we're gonna do. We process just about every Monday, somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 500 chickens every Monday. And it's our family. We have some friends of ours, another homeschool family that they come together. It's a whole barter situation. She barters meat for her family, and they come and work when we process chicken. So it's great for me. I hope it's great for them. I tell her, make sure you get plenty of meat because it's a lot of work, and most people don't want to butcher chickens, and that's okay. Because if everybody wanted to butcher chickens, I wouldn't have a job.
And we're on Facebook, Taylor Family Farm TN. Instagram as well, Taylor Family Farm TN.
So where do you buy your chickens?
Well, you are at the right place. Every other Thursday, we drop off stuff right here. The way this works is we have several drops. No, this is not the only place that we do it. But every 2 weeks, we make a run from our home, Spring Hill, Franklin, Nashville, Hermitage. And you can go on our website, and all of those places that I just named, you can pick your drop, or pick where you want to pick up at.
We're starting a YouTube channel. We got a few videos on there. It's called The Farmer Johnny Show. So you'll have to look us up and plug in, subscribe, click the buttons, you know, all that stuff they say.
We'll put a link
Somewhere.
She puts
somewhere.
links.